Las Vegas, 1974. The spotlight blazed. Elvis Presley, the king himself, stood center stage at the International Hotel, his jumpsuit glittering like starlight. 15,000 fans screamed his name. But in row 17, seat 12, sat a woman who wasn't screaming at all. She was crying, silently, desperately, and somehow, through the deafening roar of adoration, Elvis saw her. What happened next would become the most talked about moment in Vegas history, a moment so raw, so unexpected, that even the king couldn't hold back his tears. Margaret Sullivan hadn't planned to be there. At 62 years old, she'd never been to a concert in her life, let alone an Elvis show. But her daughter, her beautiful, stubborn, Elvis-obsessed daughter Sarah, had begged her for months. "Just once, Mom, before it's too late." Those words felt prophetic now. Sitting in the velvet seat her daughter would never fill. Sarah had died 3 weeks earlier. A car accident on a rainy Tuesday morning, sudden and senseless. The funeral was small. The grief was enormous. And in Sarah's knitstand drawer, Margaret had found 2 tickets to tonight's show, circled in red marker with the words "Our Night," written in her daughter's loopy handwriting. Margaret had almost thrown them away. What was the point? Sarah was gone. Elvis was just a singer. But something made her come anyway, maybe guilt, maybe love, maybe the desperate hope that sitting in this seat might make her feel close to her daughter one last time. She wasn't screaming like the others. She couldn't. The tears came instead, hot and unstoppable, as Elvis moved across the stage with that famous swagger. The music washed over her, and all she could think was, Sarah should be here. Sarah should be the one screaming. Sarah should be alive. Then, impossibly, Elvis stopped mid-song. His eyes scanned the crowd, and for one heart-stopping moment, they locked with hers. He pointed directly at her, his voice cutting through the microphone. "You. Yes, you, Mom. Come up here. I need to talk to you." The crowd erupted. Margaret froze. Security was already moving toward her row. Elvis had learned to read crowds like sheet music. 30 years of performing had taught him to spot the different faces, the screaming teenagers, the curious skeptics, the drunk businessmen, the devoted believers. But every now and then, he saw something else, a face that didn't belong to the show. A person drowning in plain sight while everyone around them celebrated. That's what he saw in Margaret Sullivan. He'd been in the middle of a high-energy number, the band cooking, the audience electric, when his gaze swept across row 17. Most faces were lit with joy, mouths open in song, hands reaching toward the stage. But there was one woman, older, gray-haired, dressed too formally for a Vegas show, who sat perfectly still, tears streaming down her cheeks. Something in her face reminded him of his mother. Not the features, but the sadness. That particular shade of grief that no amount of music could touch. Elvis didn't think. He just acted. The band stumbled to a halt behind him as he pointed into the crowd. His security team knew better than to question him when he got like this, when that spiritual intuition took over and he became less performer, more minister. As Margaret was escorted toward the stage, Elvis knelt at the edge, extending his hand to help her up the stairs. Up close, he could see she was terrified, shaking like a leaf. The audience buzzed with confused excitement. This wasn't part of the show. "It's okay, honey," Elvis said softly, his voice gentle despite the microphone broadcasting every word to thousands. "I just need to know. What's hurting you so bad tonight?" Margaret's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She was standing on stage with Elvis Presley. This was insane. This wasn't real. But his eyes, those famous blue eyes, were so kind, so genuinely concerned, that something inside her cracked open. "My daughter," she whispered, and then louder, "my daughter died 3 weeks ago." These were her tickets. She loved you so much. The arena went completely silent. Elvis didn't let go of Margaret's hand. He guided her to a stool. Someone had rushed onto the stage, positioning himself beside her, still kneeling so they were eye level. 15,000 people watched, but in that moment, it felt like they were alone. "Tell me about her," Elvis said quietly. "What was her name?" "Sarah." Margaret's voice broke on the syllables. "Sarah Michelle Sullivan. She was 34. She had your posters all over her bedroom when she was a teenager. Never took them down, even as an adult. She said you made her feel like anything was possible." Elvis nodded slowly, his own eyes beginning to glisten. "She sounds beautiful." She was. Margaret pulled a tissue from her purse with shaking hands. She was a teacher. 3rd grade. She wanted to come to this show more than anything. She'd been saving for months. She called it her dream night. We were supposed to be here together. She was going to wear her blue dress, the one that matched your jumpsuit. She had it all planned. The words tumbled out now, unstoppable. Margaret told him about Sarah's laugh, which sounded like wind chimes. About how she'd volunteer at the children's hospital every weekend, singing your songs to sick kids. About how she'd never married because she said she was waiting for someone who made her feel like Elvis made her feel special. Seen, worth serenading. She played your Christmas album every year starting in November, Margaret continued. Crying openly now. Drove me crazy. But this year, when November comes, I'd give anything to hear it again. I'd give anything to hear her voice one more time. Elvis pulled his scarf from around his neck, a famous silk scarf he'd thrown to hundreds of fans over the years, and gently wiped Margaret's tears. His own were falling freely now, unashamed. "Your daughter sounds like the kind of person who made the world better," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And she gave you something precious. She gave you the gift of knowing what pure love looks like. That doesn't die. That never dies." What Elvis did next, nobody expected. He stood up, still holding Margaret's hand, and turned to face the massive crowd. His voice, when he spoke, was raw and honest in a way his audience had rarely heard. "Folks, this is Margaret. And tonight, we're not just doing a show. Tonight, we're honoring her daughter Sarah, who should be sitting right here with her mama, but who's watching from somewhere better than Vegas." He turned to his band. "You know what we're going to do? We're going to give Sarah the concert she dreamed of. And Margaret, you're going to stay right here on this stage with me because Sarah's not missing this show. She's here. I can feel it." The audience erupted in applause, but Elvis raised his hand for quiet. "I want everyone here to do something for me. I want you to think about someone you love, someone you've lost, someone you miss, someone you wish could be here with you right now. And I want you to hold them in your heart while we sing this next song. Because music ain't just about entertainment. It's about connection. It's about love that transcends time and space." He nodded to his pianist and began to sing not one of his famous rockers, but something slower, more spiritual. A gospel song about eternal love and heavenly reunions. His voice soared through the arena, more powerful and vulnerable than it had been all night. Margaret stood beside him, openly weeping, and something extraordinary happened. One by one, people throughout the audience began standing, many crying themselves, holding lighters aloft. They were thinking of their own losses, their own Sarahs. The grief in the room became communal, shared, somehow more bearable, because it was acknowledged that when the song ended, Elvis turned to Margaret one final time. "Your daughter's love for life, for music, for making others happy, that's still here. Every time you remember her laugh, every time you help someone the way she helped those children, she's alive. And I promise you, wherever she is right now, she's smiling because her mama was brave enough to come here tonight. He wrapped his scarf around Margaret's shoulders, a gift no money could buy, and kissed her forehead. The audience gave them a standing ovation that lasted 5 full minutes. That night, Elvis Presley reminded us all that behind the sequins and the spotlight, we're all just humans carrying our burdens, hoping for moments of grace. Margaret Sullivan left that stage transformed, not healed, because grief doesn't work that way, but somehow lighter, more connected to her daughter's memory and to the world around her. What's your story? Who do you wish could be beside you right now? Share this if you believe that love never truly ends, and that sometimes the greatest gift we can give each other is simply being seen. Drop a comment below and tell us about the person who made your life brighter, because their memory deserves to be celebrated. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen when someone simply asks, "What's hurting you?" Maybe today you can be that person for someone else.